We're here with Gauldin, feminist performance artist. So let's start off with your childhood. Where are you from? Where are you from?
Well, I was born in Whittier, California,
Okay.
and I grew up with my family of, I had two siblings, a younger sister and a younger brother. This is a picture of my family. And it was pretty much a typical middle-class white upbringing in the suburbs of Los Angeles.
Okay.
And my family was in the Quaker Church. So I grew up in the Quaker Church, which I think had a big influence on my life. Oh, and then this is my grandmother. She had a dress store in Whittier, in this building that was the William Penn Hotel, which burned down. It's no longer there, but her store was called Roberta's, and this is her here, and these are like old advertisements from like the 50s from the dresses that she sold in her store. And I think she was a big influence on me also because she was an entrepreneur. She started her business by selling clothes out of the back of her old Woody station wagon, and then eventually made enough money to open a store. And I think I get some of my entrepreneurial business spirit from her. She was very close to me. Yeah.
Awesome. Did you go to college after?
I started out as a math major at Occidental College.
Okay.
And I switched my major to art, and then I transferred to University of Colorado at Boulder, where I got a BFA. And then I probably should tell you that I took a few years off of school. I worked for a year as a waitress in Morro Bay, and then I moved to Hawaii and got my first art-related job as a silversmith, and spent a year there working, and then I decided I wanted to come back to school and get my graduate degree. So I was actually on my way to New York. I was going to enroll in school back there, and then I discovered the Women's Building here in Los Angeles, and the instructors there talked me into not going to New York, staying in Los Angeles, and enrolling in the Feminist Studio Workshop, which was a 2-year graduate level program taught at the Women's Building. The Women's Building was a public center for women's culture that was founded by 3 well-known artists and art historians, Judy Chicago, Arlene Raven, and Sheila de Bratteville.
Okay.
And so they were, by the time I came, Judy Chicago was gone, but this is Sheila de Bratteville and Arlene Raven. They were two of the many wonderful teachers that were there, and they were both mentors of mine. Sheila de Bratteville is an incredible graphic designer. She's actually the head of the design program at Yale now. And Arlene Raven passed away about a year and a half ago. But the two of them were very incredible, strong women and big influences on my artistic path. When I was at the Feminist Studio Workshop doing my graduate work, I was enrolled in Goddard College, which does their master's work as all independent study. So my thesis was kind of a dual subject. It was feminist art and education. So I actually documented and wrote about the process that I was learning of feminist art education, which I appreciate that document a lot more now that the Women's Building is no longer in existence. And the other part of it was the study of matriarchal art and culture in Europe. One of the classes that was being taught at the Feminist Studio Workshop was performance art, taught by Suzanne Lacey. And she had, as an exercise in class, I think she had us do a character that was like our worst side of ourselves.
Okay.
And I performed this kind of toxic waitress act where I was all in black and my face was all white. I had big black circles around my eyes, and I served poison. I was serving poison and talking about my inner life at the same time. So I was going through these acts of serving all this toxic food and drinks and collecting tips and money and talking about the side of myself that wasn't coming out.
Okay.
And it inspired another student in the class, Jerry Allen, to start a conversation with me about waitressing, because both of us had been waitresses, which isn't that uncommon for artists looking for ways to make a living. And over the course of a year of us talking, we decided to do a collaborative performance art piece about waitressing and invited other artists to join us. And we ended up with 6 women with something like 13 years of waitressing experience among us. But we didn't just start performing, we spent an entire year to do research and talk together about our experiences of waitresses. And this is one of my characters, the great waitress goddess Diana, the many-breasted Diana of Ephesus, which is based on the prehistoric goddess figure Diana. And this was a kind of a takeoff on how the waitress has to be the nurturer, be everything for everybody. And then we kind of ended with saying every restaurant should have one. Maybe her breast should be labeled as to, what she's serving, white waiter rye. And in the end, so this is Denise, this is my friend Denise, and that's me. I'm playing Diana, and she's kind of speaking for Diana. And then in the end, we create a shrine to the waitress goddess Diana, so she stands there holding candles and baby bottle holders. And this costume was made from, I made the costume with latex cast from molds from the members of the group's breasts.
Oh, wow.
So we're all in there somewhere.
That's cool.
We played on the kind of fake smile that you always have to have as a waitress. You have to always be friendly and smiling. Mm-hmm. And we also did a spoof on how male waiters don't have to do the same thing. This is called Federico in the Shadow. And they were talking about how male waiters can get away with being like really snooty and snotty and condescending, and they still get bigger tips than the women who have to smile and look good and do everything for everybody, and be basically the servant slave, and they still don't make as much money as the male waiters do. This was a fashion show, and I think I kind of got this from my grandmother's dress store and her having fashion shows all the time, but I was the moderator of the fashion show, and we showed how if a waitress dresses more seductively, her tips will go up. And there were other characters too. There was the rebel waitress who refused to comply with any of the rules. This was another character that I developed from my fantasy of kind of always wanting to throw a drink in an obnoxious male customer's face. So this was called You're All Wet, a Waitress's Fantasy Come True. So one of the members of our group, kept harassing me till I couldn't take it anymore, and then I just threw an entire tray full of drinks in her face. And then the group evolved. Like this, I already showed you the picture of the waitress marching band. This came out of another exercise in Suzanne Lacey's performance art class, where she asked us to just imagine 100 impossible projects. In your wildest imagine, what would you do if you knew you couldn't fail? And I don't even remember now whose idea it was to have 100 marching waitresses in the streets, and we ended up doing it for the Doodah Parade. Then what happens, the group kind of shifted and changed. Some people came, some people left, that it kind of went through this evolution. And at this particular time, there were only 2 of us. This was Chetney Gunderson and myself, created this piece called Coffee Cauldron that was really a honoring of the act of serving and pouring, and it was kind of an alchemical dance. Suzanne Lacey did another kind of a community-involved piece in Ocean Park called Making It Safe, and this was a piece called Making It Safe for Waitresses, and it was about going into different kinds of danger zones in different types of restaurants until you came to the one where everyone respected each other, and the workers, got along, and the customers didn't harass you. So I guess my next major project was the Sisters of Survival, SOS, and we used the image of nuns dressed in the colors of the rainbow as our costuming, and it represented peoples of different cultures and countries working together for world peace. And this was at the time that the United States was planting cruise missiles in Western Europe, and there was a lot of protest over there. We really wanted to go to Europe to do some projects, and we decided that was really kind of what started it. We got together and we decided we wanted to travel and do a project in Europe, and we decided that in order to do that, we should address the issue that we thought was the most important one, which was the people of Europe protesting the planting of the cruise missiles. So we made up this project called End of the Rainbow, and it was really a three-part project that involved networking with artists in North America and in Western Europe about that issue. And we also networked with activist groups that had messages of peace that they wanted to give other people. So we started by collecting a group's message, translating it into like what we called message flags. And so we drew the message from each group onto these flags, and then we took these flags with us to Europe, and we hung them in public places. See, it started out with 5 of us: Nancy Angelo, Jerry Allen, Sherry Galkey, Sue Mayberry, and me. And then by the time we went to Europe, Nancy Angelo wasn't performing with us anymore. So it was just the 4 of us. What we did was this public action in front of City Hall, and we did it at the Federal Building too. I think you have better images of this somewhere else, or I can give you some slides. But the Secretary of Defense, the Secretary of Defense of the United States actually made a statement that all Americans needed to survive a nuclear attack were enough shovels to go around, that every American citizen could just dig a hole and crawl inside, and that would protect us from a nuclear attack. And and so Paul Conrad of the LA Times did this really fabulous cartoon where this was right after the statement came out, where he did a shovel graveyard. And so we saw this cartoon. We thought it was so fabulous, and we collaborated with this artist, Marguerite Elliott, who actually made a shovel graveyard, and then the Sisters of Survival performed in it. And we did it in front of the Federal Building in Westwood because that's the most heavily trafficked place in Los Angeles, and it was a media event. It wasn't necessarily for people to come and watch the performance. It was done specifically for the media, and this is a tactic that Suzanne Lacey taught us. You make your message totally clear without having to say anything or explain it to anybody, so that no matter how the news crew writes about your piece, the message is there. So we had the message on a banner: civil defense, a grave mistake. And we had the graveyard, and then we performed in it, and then we sent out press releases that we were doing this, and we wanted the news to cover us. I had an experience of being raped, and so when I was working with Suzanne Lacey's class, she did a lot of public performances about rape and women getting attacked. I don't know if you heard about the Hillside Strangler, but there was like a rapist in Los Angeles that was attacking women all over the place for a while, and she did a performance called 3 Weeks in May, and we had an enormous map of the city of Los Angeles downtown in one of the public malls, and every day she would get the police reports and map where women were raped, and for every 1 dot on the map that was a reported rape, we put 10 more dots for all the unreported rapes. And during her 3 Weeks in May performance piece, another woman in the studio, Feminist Studio Workshop, Melissa Hoffman, and I did a private ritual performance about our experiences of being raped. then I did one other piece about it when I was in Europe, called Sono Stata Violentata, which is Italian for I was raped. And this was in a gallery. It was a completely different kind of piece because there wasn't an audience sitting there through the whole thing. It wasn't like a ritual. It was more of a performance that people could come and view me doing this. It was like a painting on the floor. And I used the, what I saw was the rape of the city of Venice by all the cigarette butts that everyone dropped all over the place. It was like really trashed and dirty. So I spent the day collecting cigarette butts off the streets. And in the gallery, I painted a statement in red pencil on the floor, covered it up with cigarette butts in the shape of a spiral, and then during the performance what I did was I came in with this plastic bag and placed spiral shells, that they sell in the market, down along the spiral and went all the way into the center. So this took like a couple of hours, really slowly placing these shells next to the spiral, got all the way to the center, and then started picking up the cigarette butts. So by the time I finished, what was left was the writing. You could read the writing and the shells. This is a ritual, a private ritual that I did in my backyard in Whittier with my mother before we sold the house. And I have this picture here to show you because what happened is the place where I was doing these rituals, the grass started growing in a circle. And it was really amazing because I thought, well, this is a sign from the universe that what we're doing is a good thing. Yeah. I really fell in love with the island of Malta and the remains of the ancient goddesses that they had there, and so that really inspired me to do some work about that. So I went back to Malta in 1978 with my friend Sherry Galkey. This is an article in the Times of Malta about our piece that we did there, which was a performance. And Sherry at the time had been doing a lot of work about her upbringing in the Christian church. She was the first child of a long line of preachers to be a girl and not be able to be the preacher. So, and she did a lot of her performance artwork was about how the church suppresses women's sexuality. So she did this, we collaborated on this piece where we had the audience move. So we actually started out in a church in Malta, and she was dressed as a preacher, showing the audience a picture of her father as the priest and explaining how she couldn't be a priest. And then she took off her preacher's robe, and underneath she was dressed as a little girl with a white dress, and she had red high heels on. She started telling the story of the red shoes, and while tap dancing wildly with these red high heels on. And then she uses the high heels a lot as an image of women not being grounded, and tap danced into the temple nearby, where she collapsed at the feet of this goddess, this big one that I'm standing on here, and then had the participants carry her through the streets. It was almost like a procession through the streets and down. This is all within one town, into an underground prehistoric temple where I was, and performed like a healing ritual on her. That's what I did down in the underground temple that was lit by 100 candles.
Have you seen society improve on women's issues?
Well, I'd like to say yes. Actually, I think it's pretty disturbing that women still don't earn the same amount of money for the same job as men do. I think when the waitresses first formed, it was something like 59 cents to the dollar, and now it's 77 or something like that. I have been able to, create a pretty successful business for myself here with my partner, who's a man, and I try really hard to not fill our office with white men. We have a really diverse staff, including older women, and we work with offices all over. Like our biggest client has offices in Chicago, Atlanta, New York City, Washington, D.C.
Mm-hmm.
And what I see in their company is that the women don't ever make it to the top.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the top tier is all male.
Nice.
I see young women coming in at the bottom to work their way up, and then I see some of them leaving because I think they realize that they're never going to get to the top.
What do you think we can do to continue change or help improve change?
Well, I think raise awareness is one thing. The feminist, the goals of feminist art, as stated by my teacher Arlene Raven, is to invite dialogue, raise consciousness, and transform culture. Well, I'm involved in a church group, actually, called Temple of the Goddess, and we actually have the status of a church from the state of California, and you know, we do 4 public rituals a year. It's like ritual theater. So it's different, you know. I've got my daughter involved in that with me too, and she really likes it. So I'm doing that. That's my public action. I'm not doing performance art anymore. And also I know that younger women don't really like to be associated with feminism, and it's kind of become somewhat of a dirty word. So I don't know. I mean, I have a young daughter now. She's 12. And I would hate to see her, you know, have the same limitations, because I think that women and girls, I think they do hold themselves back, and the culture holds us back.